read off this. I've jotted down a few of my first memories at the Knoll Club.
Okay. I'm Danny Williams III, and I'm here with my father, Danny Williams Jr., at his home in Anna Maria, Florida. And Danny's going to share memories of the Knoll Golf Club in Boonton, New Jersey, a brief history, and then we'll get down to anecdotal type things and talk about some of the characters there, and just as Danny Jr. remembers it. So you want to give a little brief history, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes.
Okay, thanks, Dan. I jotted down a few of my first memories at the Knoll Club, and they were good ones, all good ones. And it was, as you all probably know already, about 50 Montclair, northern New Jersey millionaires decided to build their dream club for playing golf and entertaining their friends and business associates. It was to be very exclusive and private. There were rooms and suites to put them up for a weekend or more. Charles Banks was chosen as the architect to make it easy to walk, enjoyable for the average golfer, but also a test for the low handicap amateur and pro golfers. He also did other courses in the area, such as Forsgate and Hackensack and a few others, but these, you see the same Banks trademark on these and the great holes that he built. He was just a wonderful architect. But anyway, more on that later. And enjoyable, and my memory is mostly arriving on the scene with my dad as head pro. He was a head pro in 1946 after I left the Army in World War II. And he put me to work. And Joe and John Aiello were owners and managers after leaving Crestmont Country Club as members and taking Danny Williams Sr. with them over to the Knoll to start the Knoll. They bought it. The two brothers bought it, but that's how it ended up with them owning it and running it. And the course needed work after being public during the war years. They soon brought the club back to its former perfection, and the course and the clubhouse both, because they were run down as being a public course for a couple of years. Danny Sr., of course, made a club which filled up quickly. He made it a club which filled up quickly with a great membership. And my mother ran a pro shop, and it made it a nice position for me with Dad doing all the teaching. And I was free to play. And I played with the members and a few of the local tournaments, but mostly with the members, and worked on my game, because that would go on the pot for about 3 years without playing golf in service. So I was very, very lucky to be in that position. And anyway, many celebrities from New Jersey, both show people and athletes, came to stay as guests, as well as Dad's veteran fellow professionals. And there were Gene Sayers and Tommy Armour, Julius Boris, and many, many more. And that's enough for now. We'll have them more in a little while.
Okay. Let me just ask you this while I'm thinking of it. Talking about some of the characters there, what is your first recollection of Sam Cifelli? They used to call them the greenskeeper. Now they're known as superintendents, but that was just the common terminology for those days. And I remember Sam myself, but what is your first recollection of Sam? Maybe he was quite a character.
Yes, we became very good friends, and we'd kind of take a break around 10 o'clock and go over to the diner there on the highway on Route 46. And he'd be telling me what he's doing to the golf course. And he really was a workhorse. He took a lot of pride, and he knew this was a great layout, but it was really, it'd go quite a bit. And he was a tough taskmaster with his workers. He was out there working with them, and he made sure, and he'd have a clock on him. When we come back from the diner, he knew where a guy should have been cutting what green and what stuff should have been done.
Was he there early on? Was he there in the 40s?
You know, I really don't know. They ran it on a shoestring because there was no money from the war, and they had no play, and it was public. And a fellow named Dewey Brown, kind of manager, and he was a pro from Pennsylvania area, somewhere up in the I believe he was up, you know, in that what is that? Those courses up there in the hills there.
The Poconos?
The Poconos. I'm sorry, just getting a little old here. But the Poconos, and that's what I believe he came from, and he ran what was there. And but what was your question again?
Well, where Sam came into the picture,
Yeah.
I was wondering if he was there as early as the 40s, or, you know, all of a sudden he just appeared in our lives. You know, I just wonder if that was like his first job as a superintendent, or was he at another club? Do you have any history on Sam?
As well as I knew Sam, because finally it's more about Sam going back and forth from Rockaway
Right.
River.
That's a story in itself.
But anyway, that's a great story, yeah. But he was just a great worker. No, he might have worked on the course.
Okay, that would make sense.
Yeah, and I didn't have that, you know, knowledge of, or even the interest of who the greenskeeper.
You just wanted to get out there and play.
Yeah, I did that ball.
Now, at that time too, was Danny Senior? Was he still playing at all, or he pretty much given up playing?
Only if his good friends asked him to go out and play, because he had the arthritis.
Right.
And that was very early in his years. He just didn't play any more competitive golf. Fine player, did a lot. I'd say nationally, he won tournaments, and he performed good in the Jersey State tournaments, and very well, in fact. He runner-up, he should have won a few of them, but anyway, he was right up there all the time, and set a lot of course records all over the state. And so, yeah, he...
But his focus was on teaching, pretty much at that point.
He
was
taught all
just
day long.
Yeah.
And he'd take off
dusk till dawn
for lunch, and then he'd come back to teach some more. And the people kept coming from all around for his lessons. And I did everything in the first year. I was picking up balls for him when he teaching Billy Deer, and I stole a few of the balls to play with out there.
Well, that was another thing that I recall about golf in general, and specifically at the Knoll, was on the driving range. There was a driving range there, and they had guys shagging the balls. Now they have these machines that pick up the balls, but that was always a thing. You had like a guy out there with a shag bag.
Right, that's what I...
I wonder if he kind of doubled as a target.
You had to have good eyes.
Yeah, really.
You had to see that ball coming at you. Yeah. He first taught, I don't think there was an actual driving range there that year. He taught between the holes, between the the par 5 16th green.
Yeah, there was an open space
15th green.
Yeah.
Which is a par 5, and then the 16th went out, and the 7th, 8th would come back. But he taught in that little place under the tree there, out of the way, and he'd hit them out there, and he'd always be there. That's good because I'd come up 18, he'd would say to me, I say, what was it? He'd say, well, what are you doing that for, Dan? He'd spot me and my problems right across the fairway and tell me about it when he come in.
Maybe that's why he was stationed there, to keep an eye on you.
I don't know.
I remember him.
I knew he was there.
But even when the driving range was there, which would have been in the late 50s and
Yeah, they
early
built it
60s.
down through the woods.
I don't know exactly when they built it, but even during that period, I think I still remember he would teach over in that area that you were describing on the
Yeah.
golf course. I don't know why. Maybe
He
there
knew more what was going on there.
Yeah, you wanted to keep an eye on things, sure.
And they wanted to see him.
Right.
So
Yeah.
he'd know who played, he'd see him go by. He had to walk, not right by him, but far enough away where they knew
Maybe
him.
he was doubling as the ranger while
Yeah,
he was
that was
teaching.
part of the scene. That was going on.
Yeah, that was.
And it was a good, friendly, golfing, real pure golf interest. And that was the atmosphere up there. Because it was such a easy walking course and pleasurable to play. The bunkers were situated so, you'll get all that through it. But it was, the poor, shorter hitter would be short of the big bunkers.
Mm-hmm.
And these huge bunkers was another of Banks's trademark.
Yeah.
And you had to get that ball up in the air real quick out of them.
Yeah, my recollection is, somebody would be down in one of those bunkers. You would have no idea they were down there. You wonder, did they fall asleep down there? You're waiting for them to hit their shot.
Just throw a little sand on them. No, but they had the banks now. Very few people know that. But that was one of Sam's jobs too, that the banks used to go up above the level of the green and come down again. So you were really hitting up higher than the green. To get
Isn't that something? I didn't know that.
Particularly like the ninth
Yeah.
and a couple of those greens, they would go up and then come down, and they took all those,
They trimmed them down then.
made them at least level.
Right.
They
Yeah,
were
they're all
still
level
deep as
now.
anything.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I never knew that. That's interesting.
Yep. So that was one of Sam's accomplishments. And when you hit a ball into the woods, and I remember that distinctly, that was called out of bounds or lost ball.
You didn't even bother
Didn't
trying to
bother
find
looking. It
it.
was all thickets and underbrush, and there's huge trees lined every.
Yeah, well, they're still there, but it's cleared out. At least you can find a ball.
He cleared all that woods
Yeah.
out, and the people liked it better, and it still was a tough course to play. You still had to get by those big trees. So you usually had to chip out from in the woods. You couldn't get a shot to the green, so you didn't need all that underbrush. And yeah, that was part of Sam's work, and of course Dad and he collaborated too, and they were good friends. They got along good. They worked as a team.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yep.
How was Danny Sr.'s relationship with the Aiellos? It was pretty healthy, wasn't it? They got along pretty well. I remember how, as a kid, it always amused me. He would refer to Joe Aiello, who was the senior Aiello and really the owner of the club, as the old man.
Yeah.
Called him the old man. I always got a
he
kick
was
out of it.
pretty near the same age, I guess.
Well, that's what I thought. It just kind of struck me as humorous.
Yeah.
But I guess they must have got along pretty well in general. He and Joe.
Oh, very well. And they weren't really old. They were old to us,
Right.
You and I, and especially you. But
They were probably what maybe 50 or
yeah,
something.
that's at the most.
Yeah,
They were
could even been in
very healthy,
40s.
both of them. Joe was not a good golfer.
Oh, he did play though, huh?
He played a little, I believe. I don't have much recall of that, but John played,
Yeah.
and John was in service too. And he was, I don't know, he was some small ship. He was a pretty good ranking in there. And we're good friends. I mean, we played golf together quite a few times. Played in a couple of tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he liked the game. He liked gambling a little more, but horses, I think, was most.
Well, that was another thing I remember about the Knoll, and I don't know how accurate a depiction this is, but I won't name any names, but I remember a fella, I think he might have been the barber. They had it was strange, maybe it wasn't unusual then, but there was a couple of barber chairs, weren't there, in the men's locker room? Like they had it set up?
Let me see, yes.
And I think this fella that, as I recall, was a barber. He might have had a shop in
Lake Hiawatha.
Lake Hiawatha, and
He come up
correct me if I'm wrong, but
Yeah, you're right.
wasn't he like a bookie?
Well, they all played the horses.
Yeah.
I mean, all the help, the bartenders,
Right.
even I hate to say it, my mother would like to play the horses. The pros played the horses. They went down the track in Jersey and Monmouth and
Yeah.
on a day off, Monday. But there was nothing bad about it. It was an entertainment thing, and
Yeah. Well, I'm sure he didn't. I think he was actually maybe arrested for, bookmaking. I guess they called it. But I don't think he saw it as something, some great crime or anything. He was just kind of providing a service.
yeah, well, I'll tell you what, really, I don't know if it was the first year or second year, but we used to eat the help, which I was a part of, in the kitchen. The chef would serve us. We had our table in there. We come in at a certain time. You didn't order off the menu or anything. You got what was there, but they fed us well. And they'd all be sitting around there, and the bookie'd come in from Boughton. Boughton is where he hung out. He was Eddie, his name, I remember. I couldn't get over it. I didn't gamble. I didn't have the money to gamble. And but I was amazed that he could be sitting at the table, a bookie, and that was supposed to be illegal. And he's taking the bets for the bartenders and everybody included. And I got the biggest kick out of that. It was harmless. They would have called it in anyway. You could call it enough days. But yeah, that continued for a while. And then the old man got after him. And anyway, there was more stories about that. But nothing was, it was like the whole club. It was part of the days then. It was like, we'll get onto it a little bit, not too much of it, but the mafia, and a few of the members came up of the mafia and played a few times, and I think a couple of them even joined, but you wouldn't know they were the top echelon people, and you hear a lot of it. This quickly, just personal. They wanted to get out of it. I've heard them talk about it themselves. And my dad, they trusted him, and it was a nice relationship, but nothing where you owed each other anything. And they were gentlemen, and people knew that they were associated with it. They were so-called in business, in legal business, and that was you had and they enjoyed golf like everybody else,
Right.
and they did a little gambling, of course, among themselves, but they were gentlemen all the time.
Kept a low profile, really. They didn't.
They absolutely, because they wanted to be a part of
Right.
normal life, as I call it. So, yeah.
Now, some people probably don't know this. We won't mention specific names, but there a fellow that I believe was a member there, because my recollection is that his son took lessons from Danny Sr. in the 60s, and we were kind of out of the picture for most of the 60s, you and I, but I remember when we did return in, I'm going to say 1966, Danny would be, he was impressed with this son of a so-called, mob guy that was a member there. And so anyway, that particular fellow, the character Tony Soprano from the series The Sopranos was based on that family who belonged to the Knoll.
Oh, yeah. Well, so you know more than I know.
Well, I think if I said the name, it might,
Yeah, they don't have to do that. Nobody's interested in name. They're all.
Oh, I think they are, but we won't.
And
You can contact me personally if you want.
well, the
No
one
name.
thing too, there's still family, and
Right.
it's no fear of them. There's no.
Nah, there's
none
no
of that
threat or
existing
anything.
at all in the whole thing, and it was a good relationship. But I think you can go to the movies and see it, and that was part of it. You got a pretty good inkling of it, but it wasn't much there, and it was mostly Mountain Lakes people, lawyers. It was politicians, and
Well, you had the senator, Dave Young,
yeah,
right?
Dave Young. We had a lot of big businessmen. As Bernie Sturz had the bus line, Lakeland bus line. Not Sturz, Bernie Flynn.
Bernie Flynn, yeah.
And Maria Flynn was an entertainer in her day, but she was a little bit past her prime then. But she was a good player. Dad taught her. And Bernie was a good player. We used to go up and play Shawnee on the Delaware in Fred Waring's tournament up there.
Mm-hmm.
And but he was with he owned the Lakeland bus line.
Right.
I think that was the name of it. And yes, and there were people from Mountain Lakes, which there was a lot of well-to-do people up there. And the Rockaway River, some of them belonged to Rockaway, but that was not much of a course then either.
Right.
It was let go. I mean, most of the courses suffered during the
Yeah.
war. And I don't know whether that was ever, it was a small clubhouse and everything, but a nice little club, country club, a club in the country. And by the way, the Knoll, that was it, the Knoll Club. There was no the country club, Knoll Country Club. And people used to say Knoll Country Club, no, but they built a swimming pool.
When was the swimming pool built approximately? Do you remember?
Oh, gee, that was,
In the 50s?
yeah, they were there quite a while before that.
I remember it being there as a kid. I believe my Aunt Betty taught me how to swim there. And that had to be, I'd say late 50s, so it had to be there,
Well, John, it was John's house first, the son's. They built it for him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, right on the road coming up the hill in
Yeah.
the driveway. And then they put the driving range in at that time.
That was right next to the
The
pool.
swimming pool
Yeah.
and the driving range were put in the woods down in the woods. There's plenty of woods around there.
Yeah.
They built another 18-hole course there, so
Right.
known as the Knoll East.
Right.
And yeah, so
But it's funny now. It's known, the big course, the main course is known as the Knoll West now, but it really wasn't. And it was just the Knoll, right?
Oh, the Knoll.
I don't know when.
Knoll Club.
Yeah, and they at some point, I guess, to differentiate the two courses because they were like night and day.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing probably in the 70s they whether they did it formally or not, but it became known in local circles as the Knoll West. And that always struck me as odd. It was like the Knoll was the Knoll.
Yeah.
The Knoll East was kind of there.
Well, they had their own membership. It was a different membership.
Yeah.
And the members, that's almost when the members owned the club too at one point. And, it went to the college and we'll get
Bloomfield
into that
College,
more.
yeah.
And I think, I'm sure the history is there of it.
Yeah.
But after some of my travels, I came back, and I had a total of 13 years, I guess, at the Knoll altogether. But I was at the Knoll East for a couple of years, and it was a separate club, and it was so the members kind of ran the Knoll East, No, John still, the Ayala's were still there when I was.
Yeah, I remember
course.
John being
I
there.
mean, they're still there when that course was built.
Oh, yeah.
And, but the members were the board, I guess I'm talking about. They had a board.
Yeah.
They allowed them, the members to have a board, Joe and John. And they always had a board.
Mm-hmm.
They had golf tournaments and all that, like all the clubs had. So that there were two separate entities anyway, but,
Well, tell us about your, getting back to the characters there and the celebrities who were just so numerous. But the one that comes to mind that I know you had a personal relationship was Perry Como. What's your early recollections of Perry Como and any interesting things that might have happened? Did you play with him or, you know?
oh, yeah. Yeah, he came up with his family, and I think it was, there were brothers, members of the Knoll, and Marfuji's. And, yeah, one was, oh, no, Camarado, Tutti Camarado.
Mm-hmm. Was he a band leader or something?
He was in music.
As a
Ranger
musician.
and stuff, yeah, and whatever.
Ranger, yeah, yeah.
And so he knew the New York, you know, when there's celebrities and music people especially.
Mm.
And he brought him, he recommended the Knoll, and he come up and met Dad, and he had his family, his wife, and I guess he just had his wife there, I don't remember. No, there were no children. But anyway, quickly, my eyes are bugging when he come up because one of my favorites always Perry and the way he conducted
Well, he was
himself.
he was kind of in his prime. I mean, he was a huge
He was
star
top.
at that time.
He
Yeah.
was at the top, and he was staying there, and he liked it so much he stayed longer. I think he stayed about a week at least, maybe a couple of weeks. And so he took lessons from Dad, and he had a good swing, loved the game. He was a member of a club in New York somewheres. We have more on that, but and more stories of him. But he, great man, wonderful man. And he had, I remember him coming in, and then Dad asked me to play with him. Would I like to play with him?
Yeah.
I said, oh man, would I like to play with him? Because I was kind of hanging around looking for golf games,
Right.
you know. And what could be better? So a wonderful game we had, and he had he had like ladies clubs almost, light clubs, and a very smooth swing naturally, and he just loved golf, and he could break 80, and we had a good golf game. But let's see, what was I going to say? He came in, he couldn't sing. They wanted to get him to sing when he was around there, you know. They'd go in for dinner at night, and oh, I know what it was. That's another one, but he came there, and then he went out to play golf. Well, he's got a sweatshirt on. And there was no dress code really, but you had to dress, you know, and he dressed well, but he had no clothes, you wouldn't even recognize him. It was just back clothes. Like
He didn't have his trademark Perry Como sweater going.
didn't have any of that flashy stuff. And he looked like any guy, you know, just walking out. And the people heard that he was up at the Knoll. We keep it quiet, because the Knoll was kind of isolated, I mean, from the other. You know, it was always private.
Right.
And there was a gate. They didn't have a gate that
Yeah.
you came through, but it was like you were entering private property.
Absolutely.
Long drive coming up, and people just, you know, knew you weren't supposed to do it. So the Boone people heard that, and a lot of them were caddies, and that's how I think it got around. And they come up looking for him, and they didn't even know him. I said, "That's him over there. That's not him."
That's great.
So but that's the way he was. He was
Right. Very
it
laid
wasn't
back.
raggedy clothes. It was relaxed clothes.
Yeah.
And he was up there and relaxed, and that's another thing he loved about it. After that, they didn't bother him.
Right.
He went out to play. There was no crowd following or anything. They didn't at all. You know, it was people weren't running up asking for his autograph, and
But he did come back on kind of a regular basis.
Oh, yes. He came back a number of times.
He really liked that
For
place.
Dad's Day a lot of times, for Danny Williams' Day.
Yeah.
And they wanted him to sing, and he said
Right.
he had a contract. He's not supposed to do that, but he did.
He did really.
He did. Well, private. I mean, they can't prove anything. Nobody's going to squeak on
It's
him.
too bad we didn't have videotape back in those
Oh,
days. You
just
imagine that?
wonderful. I mean, to see that man, and he was so
Yeah.
relaxed. That's what made it, and everybody relaxed around him.
Right.
He fit right
Mr.
in.
Relaxation.
That was a perfect, really, marriage, his relationship to the club. And, yeah, there's a couple other stories. Oh, he invited me over to his club to play golf.
Where was that? In New York somewhere?
Yeah.
Long Island? Or?
The name will come back to me. I believe it was a Jewish club, I'm not sure. Which were, they got very exclusive. And some in Jersey, they went from Christian to Jewish, I'd say about 5 in New Jersey, because the money was available. They didn't have their courses, that's why. We had a few Jewish members and but you didn't see any, there were friends, members would come in the club from the members of the club.
Right.
So there was token amounts of Italians or Jewish, or there wasn't too many blacks at that time. But anyway, I wandered around a little bit.
Well, you said
he
he
invited me
you out there.
over to his golf club.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, Dad, what do you think, Dad? You think I should go over there? He says, he don't want to bother with me. I mean, I didn't have the nerve to go over and, or to call him, of course. And naturally, I'd make an appointment, call him up and see that. But I just neglected to do it, didn't want to take advantage of his good nature, and didn't feel that he should have to do that, entertain me for a round of golf over at his club. But I could have kicked myself for not doing it, because I ran into him. We went into New York, my dad and I, and it was Chuck Gardner, official at the club, and we're in the athletic club in New York, and they're giving out awards, and each club had a table, and we had our table there. And so we had dinner and everything and the awards, and we're coming down on the elevator, and Perry's just getting on it. We ducked out a little bit early, and he sees Dad, and of course he's, very friendly, and gee, it's great to see you, Danny, and the two of them. And he looks over and he sees me. He says, and you, he said, you were supposed to get me for a game of golf and come over and play my course. Can you imagine that?
So he was serious.
He was serious. He said, of course, he kind of got the picture of me that, I wasn't going to be too forward or anything. So, but he really meant it. He was a type of guy that it was just an unusual man. Yep.
Well, he remembered you all those years later when you retired. I know you didn't see him for all that time, but he sent you that nice note.
Yeah,
on your retirement.
It was mostly because I was my dad's son, but we had a little relationship, and a respect. I had certainly a lot for him, and I guess he got a kick out of me. Yeah, and, he was older than me then, I think. Seems to me. I was young. I was about 23, 20.
Oh yeah, he had to be at least 10 years older than you, I would think.
Yeah. So as he aged, he never forgot a person.
Any other celebrities that made a mark, an impression on you? I mean, what about
playing with Gene Sarazen up there?
Playing with Gene Sarazen.
Yeah, that's another great position I was in. I'd say to Mom, "What do you think, Mom?" Of course, she'd say, "Go ahead out and play." Because she's in the shop, and I was in that position. It was just a great spot. And sure. Sarazen needed somebody. Didn't show up in his group. Come on, Danny. So we played. Couldn't get over. I mean, he was probably only in his 40s then.
Yeah.
But I thinking he's, this guy's an old man. How good can he be playing yet?
An old man in
Yeah,
his
how could he be
40s.
playing? How could he be playing? I know he can play. He's a great player. He gets out there, and I remember the fifth hole, the par five.
Right.
For a second, is that the fifth, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Good par five.
And a good par five, and it's bunkered, and it's a dog leg a little
Yep.
bit, left to right. I figured he'll ease one out to the left of the bunkers. I could clear the bunker sometime, fairway bunkers,
Mhm.
1, 2, 3 in a row, and you could take it longer and longer.
Yeah.
He just got up there and took it right over all 3 bunkers. I mean, he was like
No problem.
40 yards further than I hit the ball. I couldn't believe it. I knew I was not a long hitter, but I'd get it out about 250 at my best.
And he wasn't a big man.
He's my size, but he's
There you
like
go.
a fire plug.
Right.
I saw him in the shower going in,
It's like a fire.
not in the shower, but I saw him going out of the shower and, to the locker. The guy is like a bull. He's
Yeah.
broad-shouldered and not a hulky guy, but he
Right.
was powerful for his size.
Yeah.
And he was no taller than me. He was no taller than me. About the same size, I'd say.
Hmm.
And man, he just crunched that sucker out there. And I could not believe that ball stayed in the air so long. But he was nice to play with. He had a 73, I had a 72. And I was so happy. I beat Gene Sarrazin. I
Yeah.
don't care how old he was. And anyway, he was, he didn't care. He was out there playing, enjoying himself. But anyway, he comes in. It wasn't like a match or anything. And I felt pretty darn good about it, And I said, man, I made a pretty good impression probably on him. At least I could play. And I said to him, Mr. Sarrazin, what do you think of my game? I'm thinking that at that time the members are going to get some money together for me. I guess it was the second year at the club.
Hmm.
Second or third anyway. And he's get some money together and send me to Florida and play in 3 tournaments on the tournament trail in those days. It was 3 in Florida. And I said, what do you think? My chances are. He said, what do you think? He said, try. I feel like being a tour player. He said, just you asking me, are you good enough? He said, you shouldn't do it. He didn't say you don't hit it far enough or anything like that. I figured he'd say you got to be longer,
Right.
Because I very good short game, and I was nice and straight. And he says, then you don't belong on a tour. He says you got to feel you're the best when you go out there,
Absolutely.
and you can win. So I thought that was a very diplomatic answer, and it was
Yeah.
very honest,
Yeah.
right from the shoulder. And it was said in a nice way,
Hmm.
and he was absolutely right.
Well, he would know.
Yeah, and you can see it today on a tour. Those guys
Uh-huh.
go off there like they don't care about Tiger Woods, or
They're all the best in their minds.
they are the best, and they prove it.
Yeah.
Yep. So that was I can't.
Any other great players? There's
Well, if you
tons
wanna-
of celebrities, but besides Gene Sarrazin.
Oh yeah, I played around with Davis Love. Call him the first, or anyway, Davis Love the third, who's on the tour now. His father.
So he would have been junior, probably.
Yeah, he was at Jersey a short while. I don't know if he really.
Yeah, wasn't he like assistant? He wasn't a head pro, was he? Wasn't he an assistant?
In
like
Jersey?
At Montclair or someplace like that.
What, Dan?
I don't know if he ever had a head pro job.
I don't think he
I
had
think
a
he was
job.
assistant at
Yeah.
I'm going to say Montclair or
I
someplace
think
like
he
that.
played golf. He was like, that's all.
Right,
He wasn't.
right.
He really didn't play many tournaments in Jersey. This was a
Yeah.
mid open or something
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
at the Knoll, and I was out there, and there was a low. I forget his name, a handicapped golfer. He's like a scratch player, an amateur, and Davis Love himself, and his father. The father, and someone else, and I forget who it was. But we're on the first hole, and this hotshot amateur, or good low handicap amateur. I didn't care for too much his personality anyway, but I didn't know him that well. But anyway, we had never played golf with him. We're in the first hole, and he's always standing almost opposite your line as you're putting. He's moving, and he did this for a couple of holes. And I figured I better not say anything. I looked, who the heck am I? And I'm complaining about this good player, and here's Davis. Don't seem to be bothered. Davis loved it too much.
Right.
And what a fine man, a fine player. And third green, he goes over to this guy. I see him talking to him, and then I get an ear on it, and he's saying to him, if you ever do that again, if you move when I'm putting, he's talking about himself, not what I do, but he says, if you move when I'm putting, he says, and the guy started to apology a little bit backhanded, or I didn't know it was bothering you or something.
Right.
And he says, I don't know what you do it for, but he says, stop. If you do it again, he says, I don't know what he was going to do.
You regret it.
Yeah, that guy says, well, that took care of that.
That was it.
The guy never moved after that.
Yeah.
He had a bad habit. Now, who knows what he was doing?
Yeah. Some of those guys, they test the water.
Well, I
see what
thought
they
I
can
was,
get away with.
I thought I was a pro. I was a pretty good player. I was way the hell better than him.
Usually, what they lack in talent, they make up in gamesmanship.
Oh, that was games. I figured, what is this? Yeah. And I've played with a lot of good amateurs. I mean, and they were gentlemen.
Right.
I wasn't used to any of that kind of stuff. It was.
Yep.
But that was. But I then met Davis Love himself at Somerset when they had all the pros used to go over there, Somerset Hills. And I was walking around and I see him out there practicing. I figured I got to go over and say hello to him. So, and tell him about playing with his dad. So he was, what a man, he was just like his father, sure. Gentleman, and he stopped practicing and he said, gee, and he meant it, I'm glad to meet you, and blah, 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 and he told him about that story, and he says, that's Dad.
That's great.
You don't mess with him.
Yeah.
And he was, he's but they had all the pros there. They used to have all the pros up at Roxitticus. Another story quick about Saracen. Quickly, Saracen went out on the course one day. When you took the flags on it, and you're still that way, you put them at the entrance of the green and not behind the bunkers. And it's a whole different golf course.
Right. Absolutely.
You can play it short and bounce it on. You can do anything you want. And so he played that course. He used to play with the gang he brought down with him. And, they called him the country squire. Then he came down from somewhere in the Connecticut area. And he shot a 65 at the Knoll. Now, at that course, at that time, we had the course record there. I don't know, it was about 3 or 4 69s.
Right.
And I said to him, I congratulated him. It was a wonderful game. He says, that wasn't the Knoll.
Did he really?
Yeah, he says, that wasn't the Knoll. I don't look at that as a record at all.
Really? Isn't that funny?
He said, different golf course.
Yeah, he knew it.
And to this day, you go out and do that to the pin, you got a different golf course.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that's another thing Banks did.
Yeah.
The members got the easy pins. They thought, and they enjoyed it more.
Well, that's nice that they have that flexibility. If you want the course to play fast for a tournament, you set it up that way.
And the women started to be a bigger factor at the clubs. They played golf. You had more women golfers. You had them anyway, but they had a say in and that was much more fun for women. They couldn't hit it up over those bunkers.
Well, speaking of the women golfers, I got the thrill, I remember, playing with you, which was always a thrill and a pleasure. But one day at the Knoll, I got to play with Carolyn Cadone. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget it. I mean, she was just a
Straight arrow.
wonderful person, number one. Just a joy to play with, and but what a golfer she was. And I
Yep.
think, and she played the men's tees with us.
Yep.
And as I recall, I think she shot like a 74 or something from the men's
Oh, yeah.
tees. I mean, just right down the middle every time. Could have been better. But what a player she was, Carolyn
Oh, yeah.
Cadone.
She's a national figure. She could play.
Yeah,
anywhere.
I think she won more championships as a senior player. I mean, national championships. But she played a lot of golf at the Knoll, of course.
Yeah. Well, she came up to Glens Falls when I was up there, and she set a record of 65.
65, I know. We saw that scorecard there.
Yeah, but that was from the ladies' tees, I think.
Yeah, it was. It was. But even so, that was...
Even so, it was one hell of it. And the ladies' tees weren't that far ahead up there.
No, not in Glens Falls, no.
But what a player. And she got in, I said, boy, I get hate. Did she beat, what'd she do? She beat me by a lot of strokes. I had a 71 or something. I thought I had a pretty good round. I said, I hate to get beat by a woman. I was just kidding. I mean,
Now, was she actually a member of the Knoll, or no? Or did she just take
No,
lessons
she was
up
a
there?
member of Montclair.
Montclair. But she took her lessons at the Knoll from
Oh,
Danny
yes.
Senior. Yeah.
Definitely. He
There all the time for
Well, he
lessons.
started her at Crestmont
Oh, okay.
because the Cassidy family, he was a pro.
She was a Cassidy. That was her maiden name.
Cassidy,
Yeah,
and her
right.
sister's a good player too, Billy Cassidy. Yeah, they.
Well, she probably had the course record at the Knoll. I don't even know what the course record was. You don't hear about that. It's too bad we don't have that information.
Yeah, they did.
I wonder.
Yeah,
Well, I know I will vouch for her that she shot a 74 there from the men's tees.
Oh,
So
yeah.
does that qualify as a ladies' record? I don't know.
Yeah, and I don't think they ever had any even big state tournaments for the ladies up there that I can remember.
Yeah.
The ladies, were just coming forward at that time too.
Now I remember in the '60s Billy Ziobro, who went on to
yeah.
become
Yeah.
wonderful golfer but as a pro, he had quite a career. But he was just a junior player in the state open when they had it at the Knoll in the early '60s, I believe
Yeah.
it was.
Well, he won the tournaments in the state. He won. He was a real player.
Great player.
Nice man.
Nice guy.
Down to earth guy.
But that was probably where he got his first exposure, as far as being a great player in a state tournament. I don't know if he had done anything previously, because I think he was only like 16 years old when he played.
Yeah.
He qualified for the state open, and I believe he was low amateur as a 16-year-old in that tournament.
Yeah, he was great.
And,
great at young age. Seemed
yeah.
to me he was from like in the area around Englewood or somewhere's in there, and is that where he was originally? I don't know.
I don't remember.
No, I don't know either. But he came on the scene very young and won a lot.
And he won several state championships.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say, just go on a limb and say the PGA Championship and the State Open. Probably won the Dodge. Probably won them all. I don't know. He was quite a player.
He was pro at one of those clubs near New York.
In New York?
One of them near the in New Jersey, but up in Essex County.
Mm-hmm.
There was 3 clubs. Oh, gee, all almost the same name, the name of the person that owned them. He owned all the clubs. And Billy was pro at one of those clubs.
He was not like at Montami, was he? Or
Yeah,
Montami?
And Tammy Brook.
Tammy
and
Brook.
There was 3 different clubs
Right.
there. I don't know which one. He was at one.
He
of
might
them.
have been at Montami, yeah. And he ended up at, I think in the 90s he was a pro at Atlantic City Country Club,
Yeah.
I believe.
Let me knock that off a minute, Dan.